My husband tried to poison me while I was pregnant to cover up his dirty affair. Here's why I finally divorced him. Hi everyone. This is my first post here, so please go easy on me. I'm looking for advice because, honestly, I feel completely lost about how to navigate my life right now. A bit of background: my husband, who's 27, and I, 26, met during medical school. At the time, he was dating a girl he'd been with for 6 years. Both of them were a year ahead of me, so I didn't know much about them and wasn't friends with either. Their relationship was rocky. They'd break up and get back together constantly. She graduated on time, but he needed an extra year, which is when we started taking classes together and eventually began dating. A few months into our relationship, I stumbled upon a secret Twitter account of his. He had posted something along the lines of, "You will always be the one I loved, even though we're not together anymore." I was heartbroken. We fought about it, but he reassured me there was nothing going on between them, and I believed him. I loved him and wanted to trust him, so I brushed it off as a spur-of-the-moment post and decided to move forward. We never spoke about it again. A few months later, he proposed, and I said yes. I was genuinely thrilled and excited. But his mom wasn't on board with me from the start. We come from different cultural backgrounds, and even our beliefs don't align perfectly. Once both of our families gave their approval, we announced our engagement. Looking back now, the first red flag appeared before we even tied the knot. He started treating me disrespectfully in front of others. For example, when we went apartment hunting, he called me stupid in front of strangers because I was pointing out features we needed to consider in a home. Then, he pressured me to agree to rent that apartment and later lied, saying he'd already signed the lease so I wouldn't push to keep looking. I was so blinded by love that I didn't see these as the major red flags they were. There were other signs too. He seemed more interested in spending time with his friends than with me, even though I was his fiancé. But the real trouble started when I realized just how much of a mama's boy he is. Being the oldest of 2 sons, he's been raised to believe that his parents, especially his mother, should always come first. While he doesn't openly admit it, his actions say it all. We've had countless fights because he constantly takes her side. One big argument was over our wedding date. His mom insisted on a specific date, and he went to great lengths to make sure she got her way, even though it caused friction between us. Over time, I discovered he shares every little detail about our lives with his mom. And when I say everything, I mean everything: my personal secrets, things about my family, intimate details about our relationship, and even our fights. She knows it all. To make things worse, they'd team up to figure out ways to teach me a lesson so I wouldn't act out or fight with him again. I was absolutely horrified when I realized this. For instance, he hangs out with his single friends every single day. I've tried to talk to him about it, explained how it makes me feel, and even fought with him over it recently. It's not that I want to control him, I just want to spend time with my husband. But he comes home late, sometimes at 1 or 2 a.m., even on weekdays. I usually go to bed by midnight, so I'm already asleep when he gets home. We barely get to hug, talk, or connect, and it's breaking my heart. But instead of hearing me out, he tells his mom, and she tells him he's the man of the house and can do whatever he wants. She even advises him on how to handle me, and he takes her advice to heart every time. The biggest heartbreak came recently when I had a miscarriage. Before it happened, we were already fighting about several things, one being that he gives 1/5 of his salary to his mom every month. It's not that I don't want him to help her, it's just that she doesn't need it. Her husband has a great job, and they're financially comfortable, while we're struggling to save for a house. I suggested he consider reducing the amount, and he exploded. He threatened me with divorce, swore at me, and dropped me off at my parents' house, all while I was pregnant. A week later, I miscarried. I was devastated, lonely, and so angry at him. He didn't even check on me the entire 2 weeks I stayed with my parents. I was at my lowest and began preparing myself to leave him for good. But then he came back, apologized, and promised to change. He swore he'd stop sharing everything with his family and that he'd prioritize me from now on. I wanted to believe him, so I gave him another chance. Unfortunately, things only got worse. His family got even more involved, pressuring him to make me cook and clean for him. Now, I know plenty of wives do that, but I was clear from the start I don't cook. I've never been a cook. Our apartment has a weekly cleaning service, and I do my part here and there. But it's never been something I signed up for. He knew this before he proposed, so I don't understand why it's suddenly such a big deal now. Before we got engaged, I made it crystal clear to him I wasn't going to be cooking or doing his laundry. I'm a doctor with my own demanding schedule, shifts, and responsibilities. I have my own life to juggle. He assured me it wasn't a problem. He said he didn't expect me to cook or clean and that we'd figure everything out together. But now? He's turned around and is demanding I basically act like his maid. The breaking point came when I discovered he'd been on Reddit liking and commenting on posts featuring naked women. I was devastated. In my shock and tears, I reached out to his family, hoping they'd stand by me. Instead, his father yelled at me. He told me it wasn't his concern, that his son was an adult who could do as he pleased. Then he had the audacity to blame me, saying my nagging was the issue and that I was ruining my life and marriage. He even suggested that divorce might be best because his son was suffering because of me. I couldn't believe it. There I was, sobbing over the fact that my husband was disrespecting me in the worst way possible, only to be blamed and belittled by his father. That moment crushed me. We fought, we made up, it was the same cycle all over again. At this point, I was deeply depressed. I couldn't stop crying. I felt trapped in a marriage that was draining me of everything I had left. I wanted out, but no, the nightmare wasn't over. I found out he was still stalking his ex of 6 years. He wasn't spending time with me, wasn't opening up, and our intimacy was almost always one-sided, initiated by me. When I confronted him about stalking his ex, he lied to my face, denying everything, even though I had proof. Eventually, he broke down and cried. We argued, we patched things up, and then the same issues cropped up again. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and struggling to hold it together. My mental health was in shambles, my work was suffering, and I was crying almost every single day. I wanted to leave, but part of me held on to the hope that he might change, that he'd somehow become the man I thought I married. But I was also scared. In my culture, being a divorced woman comes with its own set of challenges. It's tough to date or remarry because people are so judgmental. And while that doesn't matter as much in the grand scheme of things, I was terrified of how difficult it would be to start over. I felt broken, so shattered I couldn't figure out how to pick up the pieces and walk away. But then something changed. Update 1, we're breaking up. No more toxic relationship. Hi everyone. For those of you familiar with my story, welcome back. For anyone new, I suggest reading my earlier post for context. But to sum it up, I'm a 26-year-old doctor, married to a 27-year-old doctor. Our marriage has been nothing but a series of fights, with his family constantly interfering, him sharing all of our private matters with them, and showing no respect for me. He abandoned me during a miscarriage, lied, cheated, and demanded I cook and clean despite knowing it wasn't something I'd ever agreed to do. I was scared to leave because I loved him, and because of cultural expectations. But I finally listened to all the advice I'd been given. I started to see just how toxic this relationship is, and I began finding my self-worth again. I had one last conversation with him to see if there was anything left to salvage. Call me naive, but I wanted to give it one final try. I told him how much I loved him and how badly I wanted to fix things, but I also made it clear he'd have to work hard to make things right. His response? He said he wanted to consider divorce. Apparently, he found my previous post on Reddit. He was furious, accusing me of betraying him by sharing our problems with strangers. He was mad that people online were siding with me and criticizing him and his family. He even asked, how could you let them talk badly about me and my family, as if I personally forced everyone to comment. The irony? He's been airing our dirty laundry to his family and friends for ages. Yet when I anonymously vented to strangers, it was suddenly unacceptable. He didn't even take the time to reflect on the comments or consider what he might have done wrong. His only takeaway was that people were supporting me and pointing out his flaws. He told me to pack up and move out of our apartment while he thought about the divorce. I didn't bother arguing. I called my parents, explained everything, and they immediately jumped into action. They fully support me getting a divorce, even if he changes his mind. My dad and I packed up all my belongings, loaded them into his car, and left. Here's the funny part, even after reading the post, he still doesn't understand the damage he's done. He doesn't see how he's hurt me or acknowledge the role he and his family played in destroying our marriage. All he cares about is that strangers now know how poorly he treated me. This was the wake-up call I needed. He was ready to walk away over something as small as me posting online, but I stayed through his lies, cheating, and endless disrespect. I let him walk all over me because I loved him, while he was just waiting for the first excuse to end things. Well, I'm done. I've packed my things, left our apartment, and closed that chapter of my life for good. Even if he comes back begging for forgiveness, it's a hard no from me. For the first time, I'm starting to see my own worth. I deserve better than this, and I'm ready to rebuild my life without him. I deserve better. I may be sad, and this road will undoubtedly be tough, but I know in my heart that I'll be happier without him in the long run. No more abuse. I should finally feel free. I've come to understand that I need therapy. I've been so deeply entangled in this toxic relationship that I lost touch with my self-worth, my self-love, and even my self-care. A big part of why I hesitated to walk away was because he fed me lies, convincing me that I wouldn't find better or that I didn't deserve more. At one point, I was this strong, independent woman, but he systematically stripped me of that. It's going to take time, but I know I'll find myself again. I'll learn to love myself and focus on my life and career. Maybe I'll never fall in love again, especially with the cultural stigma around divorce, but at least I'll have myself, my family, and my pride. I'll never lose hope, though, that someone might come along someday who will treat me with the kindness and respect I deserve. To everyone who supported me, thank you. And to anyone going through something similar, I hear you. I understand how hard it is to walk away, especially from a marriage. It's heartbreaking to leave someone you love, even if they're toxic and abusive. But I'm here to tell you that it's possible to make it through. It's tough to recognize abuse for what it is when it's been happening for so long, and you've grown accustomed to it. But it's not okay, none of it is. Much love to everyone. If you ever need someone to talk to or even just to make a new friend, I'd be happy to chat. Thank you again for standing by me. Update 2. Hello again, everyone. It's been a while since my last post, but I'm back with a shocking and heartbreaking update. For anyone unfamiliar, here's a quick recap. I'm a doctor married to another doctor. We were in a toxic relationship riddled with lies, cheating, gaslighting, and emotional abuse. Things got so bad that I miscarried due to the stress. Despite all of this, I stayed, clinging to the hope that things might return to how they were in the beginning. But we separated, and our marriage didn't even last a year. It's been 3.5 months since we split, and although we're still legally married, I've had time to reflect. Looking back, I'm starting to piece together some deeply unsettling patterns. At the time, I was too blinded by love and hope to see it, but now, certain events are raising serious questions. For instance, he knew I came from a somewhat wealthy family. I now suspect he saw that as an opportunity to target me. While we were married, he constantly tried to manipulate me into giving him money, claiming his family was in financial trouble, that they might lose their house, or that he'd have to sell his car. He also wanted me to take out a $300,000 loan for a house, insisting it be under his name alone. Thankfully, I refused, but I can't help but wonder if money was one of the main reasons he married me. Things took a darker turn when I got pregnant. It became clear he didn't want the baby. He distanced himself, abused me emotionally, and made it clear he didn't find me attractive anymore. Yet, oddly enough, he started waking up early every morning to make me breakfast and made sure I ate it. At first, I thought it was a sweet gesture, a sign that he cared. But now, it's something I can't stop questioning. Here's why: he never cared if I ate lunch or dinner. He never cared if I was well rested. It was only breakfast, and only during specific times, like when I was pregnant or when we had pregnancy scares. At my first doctor's appointment, when I was only 4 weeks pregnant, all my blood work came back normal. He didn't know about the pregnancy at that point because I wanted to confirm it first. After I told him, he started his breakfast routine. 2 weeks later, I went back for another issue, and my liver function tests started trending up. The doctor didn't think much of it but suggested monitoring it. By the next appointment, my liver function tests had worsened significantly. Shortly after, I started bleeding and experienced a threatened miscarriage. I was in and out of the hospital, and during that time, he became visibly angry and frustrated. At the time, I thought he was stressed about possibly losing the baby, but now I'm not so sure. I miscarried at 9 weeks, and his reaction was chilling. He didn't care. I grieved alone, but I never saw it as a red flag. Afterward, he told me we should stop trying for a while. What's even stranger is that every time we had a pregnancy scare, his behavior followed the same pattern. He'd wake up early, make me breakfast, and ensure I ate it. Each time, my liver function tests would worsen. Then, when the scare passed or I miscarried, the tests normalized. Up until I moved out, I didn't connect the dots. But now that I'm reflecting on everything, I can't shake the feeling that he might have been putting something in my food. Is it a coincidence? Maybe. Could it be stress-related? Possibly. But my liver function tests normalized completely after I left, and they've stayed normal ever since. I don't have any concrete proof, just a series of troubling coincidences. But it's enough to make me question everything. My biggest fear, even now, is the possibility that he was putting something in those breakfasts he insisted I eat. Am I crazy for thinking that way? Maybe I'm overthinking it. But then again, this is the same man who tried to manipulate me into handing over my money, taking out massive loans for him, and practically giving up my financial independence. This is also the same man who once made a deliberate medical mistake just because he didn't feel like doing an operation. The same man who would shamelessly trick people into business deals for his gain. I never doubted for a second during our marriage that he would do something so insidious to me, blinded as I was by love and denial. But now, as I reflect, I can't help but wonder, am I finally seeing things clearly, or is my mind just creating a coping mechanism to make sense of the trauma? The thought that he might have poisoned me and my unborn child is almost too horrifying to process. But as I sit here piecing things together, I can't ignore the signs. Right now, we're in the middle of an ugly divorce battle. We're not in contact directly, but our lawyers are. It's been a war of wills. We couldn't come to an agreement because he demanded everything and threatened to take it all to court. It terrifies me how confident he seems, as if he believes he'll walk out of court with more than we tried to settle for. I've done nothing wrong except for texting him during arguments, something I now regret because it could be used against me. Meanwhile, he's been careful not to leave any evidence of his wrongdoings from the very beginning. My mind is spinning, and I'm venting here because I need clarity. I'm just grateful to be out of that apartment, but I desperately want my freedom back, the freedom to live as a single woman again. I'm willing to fight for it, but not at the cost of giving him everything he's asking for. He lied, cheated, manipulated me, and mistreated me. And now, he may very well have been the direct cause of my miscarriage. I just want peace, but how do I make sense of all of this? Update 3. Hi, everyone. For those of you who have been following my story, this will probably be my last update. First, I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. The support I've received here has been overwhelming, far more than I ever got from my own friends and family. When I was lost, scared, and unsure of how to walk away, you all gave me the courage to take that first step. I can't thank you enough for that. For anyone who hasn't been following, here's a brief summary. I was married to my now ex-husband for less than a year. We met in medical school and got married shortly after graduating. I thought he loved me, but I quickly realized he was more interested in my family's money. He tried to manipulate me into lending him money, taking out loans, and more. Despite being a successful doctor with a lucrative side business, his obsession with money consumed him. He lied, cheated, gaslit me, and even tried to turn me against my own family. His family was equally toxic, they disrespected me and mistreated me, and he let them. His mother, in particular, was a nightmare. She wanted to remain the most important woman in his life, and he indulged her, buying her flowers and gifts while refusing to get me anything. My last post was about the possibility that he poisoned me to cause a miscarriage. To my heartbreak, I did miscarry. Now, the good news, I'm finally divorced. The turning point in our settlement came when I threatened to get my hair and nails tested for toxins, as some of you suggested. He panicked and agreed to settle immediately. His only condition was that I drop any lawsuits against him and promise never to file any in the future. Suspicious, right? I know some of you will say I should have gone through with the testing and taken him to court. And trust me, I thought about it long and hard. But even if I had a toxicology report proving there were substances in my system, there would have been no direct link to him. The legal battle could have dragged on for years, draining me emotionally and financially. I consulted my lawyer, and in the end, I chose to settle. He agreed not to take any money from me. In fact, I'll be receiving money from him. While I couldn't care less about the money, I'm considering donating it to organizations that support domestic violence survivors. There are so many women out there who aren't as lucky as I was to escape in time. The most important thing is that I'm free. I feel like a massive weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I can finally breathe again. Even though it's been less than 24 hours since we signed the papers, I already feel so much lighter and happier. I don't want to waste any more energy on him. I don't want to think about his lies, his manipulations, or the pain he caused me. I want to heal and move forward. Yes, I could have fought longer for justice, but I chose the path that will allow me to reclaim my life now and in the long run. I believe karma will catch up to him eventually, whether it's for the pain he caused me, the miscarriage, or the way he lives his life. For now, I get to sleep peacefully, knowing I'm free of him. And to him, if he ever stumbles across these posts, I hope he reads every word and lets it all sink in. He hated that people called him out for his behavior, especially online, and he blamed me for allowing it. But the truth is, people were reacting to his and his mother's actions, not mine. Honestly, I'd pay to see his reaction to all of this. Thank you all for being there for me during the darkest chapter of my life. With this, I'm closing that chapter for good. Much love to everyone who supported me along the way.